Saturn isn't just about challenges, it's about what you're meant to master in this lifetime. Depending on what sign it is, that lesson can look very different. So let's break down Saturn through the signs and what it means for you. First up, we have Saturn in the sign of Aries, also known as being in its detriment. Saturn in Aries struggles because Aries is about that impulsive energy, action taking, as well as breaking the rules, while Saturn demands structure and patience. So having this placement can lead to frustrations with authority figures or feeling like you have to prove yourself through willpower. So what's the lesson here? Mastering patience and learning that success comes through strategy, not speed. So a tip if you have Saturn in Aries is to set long-term goals instead of jumping into things head first, because discipline will outlast talent every time. Saturn in the sign of Taurus. Now Taurus is going to slow things down for Saturn. However, that is in a good way. This placement brings practicality, endurance, as well as the ability to build long-lasting success. The one thing that might be somewhat of a struggle is the fear of change, because Taurus is a fixed energy. You might cling to stability so much that you resist necessary growth. So the lesson here is learning when to hold on and when to let go, because true security is not about control, it's about adaptability. Saturn in Gemini. Now here we see a mental heavyweight placement. Saturn here brings a serious, structured way of thinking, but it can also make communication feel a bit challenging. Here we can see a tendency to doubt oneself when it comes to learning, public speaking, or writing. So a great tip here would be to focus on mastering one thing at a time instead of trying to learn everything at once, because going deep is going to help you more in the long run. Next up, we have Saturn in the sign of Cancer, its sign of detriment. Saturn in Cancer can bring an emotional heaviness that they may feel like they are carrying on from childhood. People with this placement often struggle with being vulnerable, handling any type of family responsibilities, or just overall expressing their emotions. Over time, they will develop that emotional strength by facing those challenges. Those challenges are going to teach them emotional resilience as well as maturity. So a good tip here, emotional security is not about setting up these hard walls, it's about setting up boundaries. So let yourself feel those big emotions without fearing that those emotions are somehow going to break you. Saturn in the sign of Leo. So this placement brings a big life lesson in self-worth. Saturn here can sometimes struggle with confidence, creativity, or feeling seen. And there can be this tendency to really hold back due to a fear of failure. However, once people with this placement embrace a disciplined self-expression, then they will really shine. So what Saturn is trying to teach you here is not to wait for that external applause or validation, because your worth isn't measured by that. It is measured by your consistency. Saturn in the sign of Virgo. So perfectionism and hard work are going to be big themes here. People with Saturn in Virgo can really thrive on discipline, but with Virgo, they can be more hypercritical of themselves as well as others. So people with this placement sooner or later will learn that effort is going to value more than perfection. So Saturn here is trying to teach that getting lost and overanalyzing is not the way to go. You want to trust that good work is a process, not a product. Saturn in the sign of Libra is known as exalted. Saturn loves being in the sign of Libra and can bring wisdom in the topics of relationships, fairness, as well as diplomacy. So what is Saturn trying to teach here? Well, Saturn is trying to teach people with this placement to learn to set boundaries instead of always leaning towards over compromising. And people with Saturn in the sign of Libra can sometimes take a long time to commit, but when they do, they are committed deeply and with integrity. So a tip to keep in mind is that relationships are partnerships and not an obligation. So balance is going to be key here, but also knowing what your own needs are. Saturn in the sign of Scorpio. So here we can see an intense energy, and Saturn can sometimes demand a sense of transformation through sometimes struggle or challenges. This energy often comes with trust issues or struggles with power or just deep emotional work that needs to be done. However, once this is mastered, this placement is one of the most most resilient Saturn placements. So the lesson here is that true power is not about control. It's about self-mastery. So learn to let go because you will gain more than you ever imagined. Next, we have Saturn in a sign of Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is going to want freedom, while Saturn is going to demand structure. So people with this placement are going to have to learn how to have discipline when it comes to their mind and their belief systems. Sometimes this can show up as a sense of fear when it comes to taking risks or feeling like you have to prove your own intelligence. So the lesson here is that growth isn't about knowing everything. It's about having that willingness to learn. So make sure that you're not letting fear stop you from expanding your horizons. Saturn in the sign of Capricorn, it's domicile. Now I have Saturn in the sign of Capricorn, and Saturn rules Capricorn. So this placement is strong. It brings discipline as well as long-term success, but not without the work that is needed first. And trust me, I know the work is going to require time, patience, and persistence. Well, the lesson here, or the struggle, is knowing when you're carrying too much responsibility too soon, or we can also see that struggle towards the work and life balance. And that is definitely a big one for me because I have this in my 10th house, meaning that it naturally opposes the 4th house of home. So knowing when to take breaks and when to separate work from home. So the lesson here is to learn that success is not about the external achievement. It's also going to be about that inner fulfillment. So make sure that you are making space for both. Saturn in the sign of Aquarius. So here we are also at home because Saturn also rules Aquarius in traditional astrology. People with Saturn in the sign of Aquarius are our natural visionaries. However, these people may learn through detachment or a sense of independence. People with this placement can sometimes struggle with feeling different or just feeling disconnected from others. However, their role here is to build structures that serve the collective. So the tip and lesson here is that your big ideas do matter, and just because the outside world is not yet ready for them, that does not mean that they don't have value. Saturn in the sign of Pisces. Here, these people learn how to balance boundaries and intuition. People with this placement can have a tendency towards escapism, whether that's avoiding a sense of structure or avoiding authority figures or just struggling with self-doubt. However, once people with Saturn in Pisces find a balance between discipline and flexibility, they grow stronger and more confident in themselves. So the lesson to learn here is that discipline is not going to kill your creativity. It's going to give it a safe container in which to grow. So find your structure and your dreams will have a safe space to thrive in. So that is Saturn throughout all the 12 signs. Please let me know down in the comments section if any of these have resonated with you. I would love to hear your feedback. So please let me know where your Saturn is and how you have experienced its lessons. And if you haven't seen Saturn throughout all the houses, you can check out that video here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.